ready to sew this magical unicorn hooded towel? Me too. I'm Jessi from Bell by Jessi, and this is one of my original sewing patterns for you to download and sew along with me. All you need to do is go to bellbyjessi.com to download your pattern. That's Bell by Jessi. There's an extra E on the bell, not on the Jessi. bellbyjessi.com. Download your pattern, get some felt pieces to make the unicorn accessories, a hand towel and a body towel in whatever color you choose. Then meet me back here and we will sew this together. All right, I've gathered my supplies and downloaded my pattern. I'm ready to start on my unicorn hooded towel. So I'm going to take my sewing instructions, there's 2 pages of those, and set them to the side so I can work on cutting out the pattern. So we've got 3 pages of pattern pieces, and you'll see that the hood is too big to fit on 1 piece of paper, so it's split into 2. So I'm going to start with my hood first. You've got directions on here to tape it together. So what I like to do is trim everything except leave one of these little strips of white so that I'm not taping 2 cut edges together. I got a little something to hold it together. But we're going to tape our hood together, and then the rest of the pattern pieces we just need to trim out with our paper scissors. So let's get started. All right, I've got 2 pieces of my hood cut out, and now we just line up on this dotted line and take them together. All right, that one's ready to use. Now we just need to trim out all the other pieces. All right, I've got, I've got everything cut out except my little horse nostril. You'll notice it's pretty small, and it is actually the same size as a dime. So what I'm gonna do is trace my dime onto my felt for that piece so that I don't have to cut out such a small circle any more times than I need to. My horse mane, you can do it one color if you want your horse's mane to be all one color, or I do have these little dividers if you want to do a multicolor mane, which is what I'm going to do for my unicorn today. So we'll deal with that one last, but I'm going to cut out these small pieces first. Then I'll do my mane, and then I'm going to do my unicorn hood. A little trick I like to use for a piece that I'm going to cut multiple times that's pretty small is to use a paper towel instead of this pattern piece. The paper towel has a little bit of texture, so it doesn't slide around as much as like the paper piece can sometimes. So I've just found that to be easier. My horse ear is going to have to get cut 4 times, so that's the only piece I'm going to do this with for today, but I do like this if it's something that you're cutting out frequently. It's a nice way to have a pattern piece that is sturdy and durable and just easy. So I'm going to trace around my horse ear with a pencil, and then now I have a pattern piece on my paper towel. I'm going to trim that out too real quick. All right, one more little comment about this horse ear. You've got a flap noted on your pattern down here. That's for when you sew it. I'll fold it sort of real quick to show you. So that's not anything you need to be worried about at the cutting stage, but when we get ready to sew it, that's what's going to help our ear stand up on top of our unicorn's head. So let's start cutting out some of these felt pieces. My towel is purple, so I found the closest purple I could. It's not an exact match, but it's close. That's good enough. So that's what I'm going to cut my ear out of for my horse, and I need 4 of them. So I am still going to fold my felt in half so that I can cut 2 at a time. And another little trick is I like to use the flat edges whenever possible. My pattern piece has a flat edge, my felt has a flat edge, so that I don't have to cut any more than necessary. So I'm going to put my felt piece on there. It stays put pretty good, so I'm not going to pin it. I'm just going to hold it with my fingers and be able to trim all the way around that pretty easily. So let's cut out some ears. All right, the inside part of my horse's ear is going to be light pink, and I need 2 of them. Same thing, I'm going to fold it in half so I can cut 2 at one time, and I'm going to put that flat edge against the flat edge of my felt. Now we can pin this. We'll go ahead and pin it, sure. I work like a production worker sometimes. My background is in production pattern making, so sometimes I skip those steps. So I frequently like to cut without pinning. So there are my unicorn's ears. All right, let's do the eyes. So same thing, my eyes also have a flat portion to them, so I'm going to fold in half so I can get 2 at one time, and I'm going to use that flat edge. So look, I didn't cut my eye quite perfectly. That's fine. One of the reasons we love to use felt is because it doesn't ravel. So I'm going to just try to smooth that out a little bit with my scissors. And another little trick I like when I'm cutting these pieces that are going on the face, instead of opening it side to side like a copy and paste where my 2 eyes are identical, because I didn't cut them perfectly, it's almost impossible to cut them perfectly, but I like to open them like a book so that I have a symmetrical set instead of a copy and paste set. So I'm going to open mine like that so that it looks a little bit more natural. All right, now I'm going to do my horse pupil. I have black on here for you, but since I'm doing a unicorn and not a horse, I decided I wanted it a little bit more colorful than that. So I'm going to give my unicorn these brown eyes. So let's cut 2 of these. Same thing on my horse pupil here. Look, I got one side came out a little bit taller than the other, so I'm just going to trim it. There, that looks much better. So same thing, I'm going to open it like a book and put my eyes on here. Oh, that's looking cute. Okay, so my little nostril piece here, I'm going to use my dime so I don't have to cut the paper piece out. So let me get my brown back over here. And I've got a pencil. This may not show up on the video. Let's see. All right, I'm going to do it on this side. So I need 2, so I'm going to put my dime down and trace around it. There, it's pretty faint. I don't know if you can see it on the video, but I have a circle traced on there. Let me do another one, and then I'll trim those out. All right, let's get the unicorn horn. So I have yellow on here, so it'll kind of look like a golden horn. But then when I was in the craft store, I found this piece of felt that is sort of variegated. It's got yellow and pink on it. I think this is going to be cute for my horn, so that's what I've picked. Now, my horn is going to end up curving around, so it'll be sort of a cone shape. So the stripes aren't going to work exactly like on here, but I'm okay with that. I want to have a little bit more of the yellow color, so I'm going to pin mine down towards the bottom. All right, now I just need one of these, so let's cut out the horn. All right, and now for the mane. So if you want your horse or unicorn to have a mane that's all one color, then you cut this out as one piece, and don't worry, we'll slit into it later to give it that movement look, the little pieces that are going to look more like hair, but we're going to cut it out as a solid piece. Or if you want a multicolor mane, then I've got some lines on here where you can split it into 4 pieces, which is what I'd like to do. So mine's going to be sort of rainbow colored. These are my 4 pieces. And then my towel is going to be purple to kind of go along with that little rainbow. So I have numbers with them too. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the 1 would be what's up close to the top of the head. So it'll be sort of in between the ears. And then the 4 will be what's going down the back and closer to the neck. So if that matters, those numbers can help you cut them out in the order that you want them. Don't stress, it'll work out even if you get them mixed up or turn them backwards or anything like that. But this is the order I want mine in. I want my 1 to be the blue, my middle ones to be the green and the yellow, and then the one closest down to the neck to be the orange. So I'm going to trim this out with my paper scissors and then cut each of these pieces, and I'll show you how I like to put them together so that I keep them in the order that I want them after I cut them out. But let's trim this with the paper scissors and then cut these colors. Well, I just nicked my pattern. Darn it. It's okay. All right, so there's my 1 blue, and then I'm going to cut my 2 out of green. I'm not pinning these. I'm just lining up those straight edges and holding it in my hand. Of course, you cut it the way it's most comfortable for you. Okay, so again, don't stress yourself out about this. It doesn't matter if they get mixed up, but currently they are intended or designed to line up just butted right up against one another. So if you have them pinned and you don't want to think about it, you can leave it like that. What I'm going to do is take my paper pieces off, and I know the color order that I want them in, but what I'm going to do is stack them just like this, so I can still see the color order that I have, but I know I haven't flipped any of them over, and I'm going to carry them like that right down to my sewing machine. All right, so there's our horse's mane, and now we're finally ready to cut out the towel pieces. So our hand towel is what we're going to make the hood out of. Let me slide some of this stuff over, make sure I got enough space. And I'm making a purple unicorn. But I want to show you real quick on my hand towel. So this side is plain, but then this side has this little stripe design that's kind of in the fabric. I don't want that in my hood, so instead of just folding it in half, what I'm going to do is fold it from one edge to that stripe. And I'm going to see if I can get my hood out of there. I should be able to. This hood is not too big. All right, so this is how I'm going to cut. Let's make sure it'll fit. Oh, yeah, just barely in there. Let's see, I can scoop this over a smidge more. Perfect. Okay, so, oh, look, I have it sideways. Whoops. All right, yeah, that just fits in there. So, I had my hood sideways. Good thing we got markings on there, right? So, the fold obviously goes where you've got your towel folded. And then down here, you have a little note. We want to use this finished edge of the towel in our project that we're making. That's one less thing that we're going to have to worry about with raveling and covering a raw seam. So don't cut this edge. We don't want our towel floating up here in the middle. We want to use that edge. So our note here reminds us of that also. But we want to line this corner up with the fold and with that finished edge. Yeah, and I fit just right inside there, so I'm not going to have to get that stripe part in my towel. Now our little snout is going to go over here in the extra part. I did not give you a grain line on that because this is terry cloth, so it can go either way. I recommend maybe don't put it diagonally, but put it either parallel or perpendicular to the edge of your towel. So we'll cut out the hood first and then we'll get our snout. You can pin this like normal. I like to cut without pinning, so I'm going to put a weight on it. Now you can use anything heavy. Your tape dispenser may be heavy enough to hold it there. You can buy a pattern weight, but what I like to use is these old irons that you can find at antique stores and places sometimes. They've got a handle, they're very heavy. The only thing you have to watch out for is to make sure that the bottom of them is nice and smooth so it doesn't snag your fabric or tear your paper. But I've got my pattern piece lined up, so I'm going to put my weight right in the middle there and then trim around just those two edges. All right, so there's the body of my hood, and you'll see it's already starting to drop some little pieces of fabric. It ravels quite a bit. All right, now my horse snout, again, either way, it doesn't really matter. So if your towel's not exactly the same width as mine, that's fine. As long as you can fit it in there, parallel or perpendicular, it does not matter which way. So let's get this on here. I am going to pin this one because my weight is too big, so that'll be a little bit difficult to work around. So let's stick a few pins in here and cut this piece out too. We need 2 of this one, so still got it folded, and I'll get 2 when I cut around here. All right, let's just take a look real quick at how cute this is going to be. So there's my horse face, and then it's going to have this cute mane coming down. Oh, so cute. All right, let's take all these pieces to the sewing machine and start putting it together. All right, the first thing we're going to do is get our horse snout ready. So let me slide some of this stuff out of the way. So what that means is that we are going to sew the 2 little nostrils onto one piece of the horse snout. Now, terry cloth typically doesn't really have a right or wrong side, but if one side of yours looks better to you than the other, then pick what you think is the right side, and you're going to sew your 2 little round snout pieces onto that right side. Now, remember or think about, we're going to be taking about a 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around here, so you just want to make sure you're not too close to that seam allowance, but otherwise you can kind of just eyeball those and put them where they look good, and then you're going to edge stitch as close as you can to the edge all the way around the circle. I have a lot of colors for my unicorn today. It's going to be very colorful, so I am threaded in just beige thread, and that's what I'm going to use for all of my unicorn my project today. All right, so here we go. We're gonna edge stitch around these circles. Feel free to use your hand wheel if that helps you. So I'm just gonna back stitch when I come around. I'm gonna lap over and then back stitch at the end. All right, now I forgot to point out, you've already noticed my machine may be a little different from your machine at home. I have an industrial sewing machine, which still makes a straight stitch just like your home machine does. But I do have a presser foot lifter in the back, just like you do, but I also can control it with my knee. So sometimes you'll see that going up and down without me using my hands. That's a little perk of an industrial machine. All right, so let's get the other one on there. Same thing, we're just gonna sew as close to the edge as we can around that circle. Already looking cute. All right, we're gonna take our other terry cloth snout piece. Again, if one side looks like the right side to you, you wanna put the right sides together. You can pin this if you want. I may just hold it with my hands, but what we're gonna do is stitch around all these curved edges at about a 1/2 inch. We're gonna leave this straight edge open to turn it. Back stitch at each side. All right, you can clip the curves if you want to. What I'm gonna do is actually trim them down closer, about a 1/4 inch or a little bit smaller, closer to the seam. It's the same thing. It's going to take some of that bulk out for when we turn it inside out so that those little curved, tight curves are not going to be so thick and bulky. Whew. And you can tell this terry cloth kind of ravels everywhere. We are going to cover all these seams in just a couple minutes. All right, but let's turn this out. Oh, that already looks so cute. Awesome. All right, set that to the side for just a minute. We are gonna insert our mane next. So if you have a multicolor mane like I do, we want to kind of put it together so it's gonna stay put. This kind of narrower side is what's gonna get sewn in the seam. This wider side is what's gonna hang out and be the hair. So I'm actually gonna flip mine this way just so that I have the part I wanna sew closer to my needle. But I'm gonna spread these out where they're just touching so they're butted up against each other. So that's how my mane is going to look. And so I don't have to hold those with my fingers. I'm just gonna stitch right here to hold them all together. So I don't need to back stitch. I just need to hold them together. And in a minute, I'm gonna sew at about a 1/2 inch seam allowance again. So I'm sewing a little bit less than that right now just to make sure that this stitching is not gonna show after I do my seam. All right, so now they're all hooked together. They are gonna flip-flop around a little bit, but that's okay, they're hooked together. All right, let's get our hood piece. So on our hood, the fold is where our face is gonna go, and we're gonna put our mane into this curved. And I'm gonna get it up as close as I can to the top part. So again, there's really not a right or wrong unless yours has a different look on one side. But we want it right sides together. If yours does have a side that looks nicer, so we want right sides together. And we're gonna open this and just stick this mane as close up in here to that end point as we can get it. And now it's actually, this part's a little bit easier if you have the multi-point, multicolor mane, because you can kind of overlap the parts. If you have a solid colored mane, you'll just kind of walk it a little bit with your fingers since you're trying to sew a straight piece into a curve. But either way, it's gonna be pretty similar. All right, so again, you can pin this. I'm just gonna hold it with my fingers, but we're gonna sew about a 1/2 inch seam allowance. We're gonna back stitch at each end. Oh, well, my thread broke. All right, give me a second. All right, let's try that again. So I've got my main in here, and I'm going to back stitch at each end and sew this whole hood curve. All right, we can take a little peek at it. There's our main in there. Oh, that's gonna be so cute. All right, so let's cover this terry cloth so that we can go ahead and get these raw edges covered and out of the way. So normally I tell you to buy matching bias tape. If you found some that match, that's perfect. The closest I could find was this dark purple, which is fine. It's gonna be all inside of the towel anyway. But since it was going to show a little bit, I also saw this rainbow kind, and I thought, why not make a little fun pop of extra color inside since I'm making a colorful towel. So this is what I'm gonna use. So mine doesn't match, but I'm gonna see how fun this is gonna look when I finish. So whatever color you have, get your bias tape out, and that's what we're gonna use to cover these raw edges of the terry cloth. I'm gonna take this whole thing off of the cardboard. Okay, ooh, this one lines up nice. So mine's actually folded up where those folded edges align really nicely, which is fine. Sometimes you'll find one where one side sticks out a little more than the other side. If that's the case, use that to your advantage. Put the longer side on the bottom so that when you're sewing, it's a little bit easier to catch it. So it's gonna end up being wrapped like that and cover this seam. So if you have one side that sticks out more than the other, put that on the bottom. Mine looks pretty daggum even, so it doesn't really matter which side I start from. And I'm gonna flip my hood over so that I can start on this other raw edge down here, which is actually at the bottom. But on this side, I don't need to do anything to my bias tape. I'm gonna leave that raw edge of my bias tape even with the raw edge of my towel, but I'm going to wrap it around so that that seam is encased, totally covered with this bias tape, so I don't have to worry about it raveling anymore. So this is what we're gonna do. Again, you can pin it. I'm just gonna use my fingers and cover it as I go. But we're gonna sew this whole seam, and I'll tell you what to do when we get to the opposite end. We're gonna back stitch here and then keep going to the other end of this curve. Let's take a peek, make sure, yep, I'm catching it on the back side too. All right, when we get close to the end of the seam on this side, we're gonna cut our bias tape and leave ourselves a little bit extra to turn under. So I'm gonna clip this off, give myself a little bit extra. So we don't want a raw edge here either. I don't want any raw edges inside of my towel. So I'm gonna fold this in and then let that bias tape fold itself the way it's already creased. Let's see if I can get my finger out of the way. So then I'll have a fold, so a clean finish here, and a fold, clean finish here. So this is going to be the face. So you don't want it to stick out too far. That's gonna be where the person wearing this, where their forehead is. So I think I can get mine a little bit closer, so I'm gonna trim mine and see if I can get that seam up a little bit closer. I mean, that bias tape up a little bit closer to the edge of the seam. Make sure it's all those raw edges are going to be folded inside there. Oh yeah, I like that better. That lined up very nice. All right, I'm gonna finish sewing to the end and back stitch. I ran off, so I'm gonna do it one more time. There we go, got it that time. All right, so I've got it. Make sure there's no holes on the back. Oh, that's gonna look fun inside this towel. Okay, so here we've got it folded up, so there's no raw edges there. We're gonna cover this bottom part in a minute too, but let's go ahead and open that. Oh, look at this. So it's not clipped into more little hair pieces yet, but that already looks so cute. All right, so this front, this is the face part. We used that finished edge that was already on the towel, so we don't have to do anything to that just yet. That's already not going to ravel, not anything we have to worry about. But this bottom, this neck edge is going to ravel as well. So what we're going to do is cover it with the bias tape exactly the same. Let me find my end. But we want to do that little fold on both sides so that we don't have a raw edge of our bias tape either. So I'm going to go ahead and fold about 1/4 of an inch or so under here. Let the bias tape crease itself where it wants to, and now I'm going to put that around the raw edge of my terry cloth. So just like this. So I'm going to sandwich it. Everything's covered, everything's all lined up, and I'm going to sew this all the way across and do the same thing at the opposite end. Make sure I'm catching the back. Yep. When you get to the center where you're going over top of the other seam, it may be a little thicker. If you want to use your hand wheel to help your machine get over that thick part, that's fine. All right, when I get to this end, I'm going to try to get it to line up as closely to being in line as I can. So let's see if I can fold this just right up to the edge of that terry cloth so everything is so nice and neat. Almost. Let me fold that one a little bit more. Alright, I should have stopped a little further back so I had a little bit more space. Alright, there we go. It's pretty close. It's not perfect, but it's close. We're going to back stitch here. Oh my goodness, y'all. I'm going to enjoy looking at the inside of this towel. This is the first one I've made with a contrast fun bias tape. I love it. Alright, great. So our hood doesn't have any raw edges now. The last thing we got to do is our snout here. So we're going to do the same thing on it. This is a little thicker because we're going over this seam, but we do want to cover this with the bias tape right here, and we want to try to fold the bias tape again inside of itself so that it doesn't leave a raw edge either. So let's do that. Alright, I'm going to give myself a little bit more room to work with this time, but I'm going to trim this and fold it, and I'm going to try to get it to line up just right. If it doesn't, that's fine. Sewing is never perfect. Oh, that's pretty close. Alright, we're going to back stitch at this end also. There we go. Alright, so you see I didn't get as close to the edge on the back. That's fine. As long as there's no holes in there, it'll keep that raw edge of the terry covered. And that's what we want. We don't want any of those raw edges in there. Okay. So now we're ready to put our snout onto our hood. So this, obviously we have a right side now. We have a right side here. So it's going to end up like this. So what we're going to do to start. Oh, look at me. I got it upside down. Silly Jessi. That's our neck. Our face is up here where we don't have a seam. So it's going to go like this. So we have a right side and a right side. We want to put this here, but I'm going to show you a little trick to find the center. So let's fold this in half. So easy to find the center there. We're going to just pinch it, and then we're going to fold our snout in half to find the center and pinch it. We're going to line them up. So we've got our two folds lined up. And then you're going to open and pinch the two together on the inside. Open it up. There you go. So we're going to have our right sides together. So when I sew it, it's going to be like this. I am going to pin this so it doesn't shift around and make me lose my center here, so that I keep it centered. Alright. So we're going to sew across about 1/2 inch, which happens to be about the width of this bias tape. So we want to sew just to the side of the bias tape, and we're going to back stitch at each end. that's already so cute. All right, so we don't want this just flopping around in here, so we're going to hem this. So you don't have to do anything to this edge. It's that finished edge of the towel. Let me get my mane out of the way. But all we want to do is fold it in so that it creates a nice little hem. So it'll be just terry cloth on the outside. And then it'll hold our snout so it's not flopping quite so much either. It'll hold that snout seam down. So we're just stitching a little hem. It's going to be, again, about a 1/2 inch. Back stitch at each end. Alright, so there we go. We're going to add the eyes and the ears here momentarily, but now you can go ahead and clip your mane a little bit. So to make it look more like the hair, we're just going to cut in here to make some wide slices that are going to be the hair for the mane. So I'm going to do 2 cuts inside each one of my colors to make 3 little sections. So you don't have to cut all the way down to the seam. I'm just going to cut down quite a bit so that it can kind of flop around and look like the hair. Alright, there we go. So we got a little more of that hair effect now for our mane. Okay, let's put the hood up here for just a minute and start working on the eyes. Oh, that's so cute. I love all those colors. Okay. Alright, so for our eyes, if you haven't already opened your 2 pieces, again, I suggest opening it like a book so that you have 2 mirrored pieces rather than a copy and paste piece. And you can place the pupils how you like. I think it looks a little bit cute if they're just a teeny bit offset closer to the center. I feel like that gives it a little bit of a cute cartoon look, but you can put them right in the center or however you want to do it. Alright, so the first step we want to do is stitch all around the pupil minus brown. Yours may be black or another color, but we want to stitch all the way around as close as we can to the edge of that brown or whatever color you have. I'm going to back stitch at each end of my edge stitching. Look, I got a little crooked there. That's okay, I can trim that white, but I'm going to sew the other one first. Alright, so there's my 2 eyes. This one's actually a little bit crooked. You know what I'm going to do to fix that? I'm just going to trim that little bit of white part right there. Voila! Totally fine. No need to freak out or be worried about it. Alright, let's go ahead and put these onto our horse hood. So, I am going to pin these. You do have a marking on your pattern piece, but because things are never perfect when we sew, I like to eyeball it on the actual thing that I have sewn. So I'm not going to use those markings. I'm going to look at it in real life and place them where I think they look good on the actual hood that I have sewn. How about that? I think I got it on the first try. Alright, I have mine sort of lined up with the edge of my snout. And then, of course, they're flat, so I can kind of eyeball making them parallel to the top of the snout. I like how that looks, so we're going to do the same thing now. We're going to edge stitch as close as we can to the edge, but now we're going to sew the eye onto the terry cloth. It just keeps getting cuter and cuter. All right, we're gonna make our ears now. Let's put our hood out of the way again for a moment. All right, so our ears are going to be 2-ply. They have pink for the inside of the ear, but the ear itself is 2-ply. And again, it's supposed to match your towel. I couldn't find quite the right color purple, but it's close enough for me. So it's kind of the same skin fur as the body of your horse or unicorn. And then it's got the pink on the inside. So let me show you real quick. On our pattern piece, we had a flap here at the bottom. So we don't want our pink to come all the way down. We want it to kind of leave some space. And when we sew, we're going to leave some space for this flap to get pressed out to be sort of little feet. So let's see if I can hold it where you can see it. So it's going to end up like this on our hood, and that's what's going to make it stand up. So the first thing we want to do is just get one of the body ear pieces, one of the pink pieces, and we're going to edge stitch this pink inside of the ear. So we want to leave about a 1/2 inch down here, and then of course some space around the top part of the ear too. All right, so we have our horse ear, and now we want to make it 2-ply, so we're going to put it on top of another one. So I've got the pink only on one side, the back's going to be just solid purple. But we want to stitch these together, but not where this flap is going to be at the bottom, so it can still open. So we're going to stitch from here all the way around the top, and we're going to stop again on the other side about a 1/2 inch up, or about even with the bottom of that pink. All right, so now we can see a little easier what we're going to do in a minute. It's going to sit up like that. See if it'll stay. Sort of. So that's how it's going to stand up on our horse hood. So let's make the other ear same way. We're going to sew that pink on, and then we're going to make it the 2-ply ear. All right, so these look pretty good. I did good. If yours shifted a little bit, don't line up exactly right, just like I did with that eye earlier, it's felt, you can just trim some of the edges off to make it lined up around the edges, and that'll be fun. All right, so now we're going to pin our ears on. So we want to just finger press those flaps open. And then again, you have a marking on your pattern piece, but I like to work with what I have actually sewn here in real life. So I'm going to eyeball it. I'm going to pin these on and then take a moment to see how they look. Make sure I like them and that I have them pretty even before I sew them. These are going to go a little bit up into the hairline of your horse so that that mane can kind of flop over in front of the ears just like on a real horse. So it is going to kind of be in that back in the hairline a little bit. All right, there. I think I finally got it now. So, yep, I'm happy with that. All right, so what we're going to do on our flaps is you want to stitch one stitch as close to the pink as you can. It's not going to be right up on it, but as close as you can. And then if you want to go across, just so you don't have to start and stop again. But then we also want to edge stitch on the front part of that flap. So we've got at least 2 stitches there holding this ear nice and secure in place. You're going to do it on the front flap and on the back flap for both ears. All right, so if you're making a horse, you're ready to attach it to the body towel. This is so cute. But we're making a unicorn right now, or at least I am, so we need to make our unicorn horn. So I'm going to machine sew this. I know some of you are going to want to hand stitch it, which is totally fine. I like to sew everything on the machine, so I'm going to do this one too. So the first thing we're going to do is make it into a cone. So we're going to fold these two straight sides together, and we're going to stitch all the way up this seam. Now this is going to make a little tiny seam that's going to be on the back beside the mane of my unicorn. So you can look at mine and see if you like it, or if you want to try to make a hand stitch that's a little bit smaller. But I am going to edge stitch as close as I can to that straight edge line, and I'm going to back stitch at each end. It's very hard to get exactly up to the point. That's fine, because guess what? It's felt, and you can trim off if it's a little bit crooked. Let's see how I do. Yep, I'm just a little bit off too. So you know what I'm about to do. I'm going to just trim that right there. Perfect. Alright, so mine is going to have this little seam on the back, which I am a-okay with. So this is the way I'm sewing it. That's going to go like this. So that little seam is going to be towards the mane in the back. Oh, I got another little thread. Let me get that. Alright, I am also going to machine stitch my little flaps here. So let me show you how I do it, and then you can decide if you would prefer to hand stitch it. We have our point here. This is where the end of our bias tape is. So it kind of makes a little point right here at the top of the head. And I'm going to put my unicorn horn right on top of that. And what I want to do is fold this front one under. So I can give it a little finger fold right there. I'm going to fold that one under. And I'm going to line it up right on top of that little pointy part. I don't want to go on top of my mane. I want to get real close to it, but not on top of it. All right, let's see if I can kind of hold it and show you. So that's how it's going to go. So what I'm actually going to do is flip this forward, and where that flap is, I'm going to sew that flap down. So let's see. So this center flap right here, I'm going to sew basically like this, and then turn it up so it'll be stitched but inside the cone. All right, so does that make sense? All right, let me kind of eyeball it in place again, and then I'll sew it, and you can see how it looks. All right, so I'm just sewing that center flap right across here. And I am going to say this cute felt I found is a little bit thinner. Not sure I like it as good as if I had just made a yellow unicorn horn, but it is going to look cute. So we're going to keep sewing it and see how it turns out. All right, so I'm going to turn this up, and now I'm going to sew these flaps out to the side. So they are going to show the way that I'm sewing it. I'm going to stitch across this flap, and I'm going to stitch across this flap. So it'll be secured in 3 places, and that'll hold my unicorn horn up. All right, and on this flap, because it is showing on the outside, I'm going to stitch along the edge also, just so it stays really flat. All right, so I'm going to stitch my other flap same way. Oh. Alright, hold on, I broke my thread. Let me stitch that last little part again and make sure that my back stitch is very secure. Oh my goodness, that is so cute! Alright, so you can see how my horn is stitched on here. So I do have these flaps that show on the 2 sides. The front is hidden, and then the back actually is just resting here. So I can almost stick my finger up inside there. Yes, you can wash it like this. It'll probably come out flat. Just kind of poof it up again, and it'll be ready to wear and enjoy over and over again. Now, some of you are going to want to stuff inside this cone to make it keep its shape. I mean, it pretty much stays put with those flaps. My only caution of that, if you want to stuff it, that's fine. Go ahead and knock yourself out. When I have made plushies before, those little fiberfill fibers can get through the tiniest of little holes. So you're going to have to hand stitch around here pretty securely just to keep them all up inside there. Oh my gosh, that's so cute. Okay, so now we need to attach it to the body towel so that we can actually use this, or whoever it is that gets to enjoy this can use it. So get your body towel out, and we're going to do our little pinch trick again to find the center. So let's see, I don't know. You can see this whole thing on the video. So I've got my body towel folded in half. So I'm going to line these edges up and then find the center, pinch it here at the center, and then same thing with my hood, although I have a seam there so I don't have to find the center. I know that that seam is the center. So I'm going to put my center folds right beside each other. And then I'm going to open just a little bit so that my fingers can pinch one of each. And then open it out. And now I've got the centers lined up without having to do any measuring. I'm going to pin this so I keep it centered and it doesn't slide one way or the other on me. Alright, let's see if I can do this without knocking everything off the table. So let me pin this a little bit, and then we're going to attach our hood to the body towel. And yes, I like to pin on my sewing line and just remove the pins as I go. You pin the way that you like to do it. As long as you get it sewn together, that's all that matters. Okay, when I backstitch here, I am going to backstitch and then backstitch again. So I'm going to triple stitch it. This hood is hopefully going to be enjoyed quite a bit, and this is going to be a stress point where the hood is attached. So I'm going to triple stitch it, backstitch, and then backstitch again, so it's stitched 3 times on both edges. Again, I'm going to sew it about a 1/2 inch seam allowance, or whatever it takes to cover this bias tape right here so it doesn't show on the outside. There is our unicorn. Oh my goodness, that is so cute. So on the outside, your bias tape doesn't show. If you manage to find some that matches your towel a little bit better, it'll just blend in there. Or if you use something wild, like I did, you've got some nice fun patterns on the inside too. And there we go. There's our unicorn hooded towel. I had so much fun sewing this fantastic unicorn hooded towel with you. I hope you enjoyed it too. If you're not already, subscribe so you don't miss any of our hooded towels, DIY projects, sewing tips, and more general fun in the sewing studio. I look forward to sewing with you again soon.
And also like and subscribe. Yeah, so like and subscribe.
Thanks, boys.